What are the perceptions that many people still have about us who are blind? Oh, I think people would not want to think that we are less capable, or that jobs may be more limited, or that our opportunities to contribute in life are fewer than anyone else. It won't be the most obvious thing that people will have on the forefront of their mind, or will they? Unfortunately, even 37 years after the Americans with Disabilities Act was put into place in 1990, people still have a lot of misperceptions, hold a lot of myths about us who are blind. And that affects us in our desire to show people our dignity, to raise awareness of our capabilities, and to encourage one another. Welcome to the third segment of Boldly Blind. And before we get into discussing how, instead of being a limitation or a barrier, blindness can be a blessing. But before that, let's review. What does it mean to be boldly blind? It means to take that step forward, to go sometimes beyond our comfort zone, beyond what we think we can do, and to encourage one another to knock down those barriers, jump over those hurdles, and to have goals that we can go after. So on this podcast, we seek to encourage you who are also blind like me, to give that spark of hope, that drive, that desire to do things that maybe people have seen in you, maybe that job that you are looking to do, or that school you want to attend, or that sport you want to play. And for those who are not blind, we wish to raise awareness of our capabilities and the dignity that we see that we have in contributing to society around us. But about those misperceptions that affect us, well, we've heard them. Yeah, well, you're blind, but we've already hired our other token blind person in the department, and maybe you're not as qualified as them. Or, well, we've had a blind person before, and the experience wasn't so great years ago. So maybe you're just like them. Well, okay, those perceptions can sound hurtful, and they often are, and they often will get in the way of someone who's especially newly blind and wanting to go on with their life. The truth of the matter is that we who are blind can see ourselves as having no barriers of our own making, but that we can do those things that we make adaptations to do, to make accommodations to do, so that our blindness, in fact, can be a blessing, a gift, an opportunity to reach out and help other people. So how can we do this? How can we turn what many to be consider a curse or a limitation into something that is a vast opportunity for us? Well, let's take a look at a few areas. And first of all, when relating to one another, it's always good for us who are rather independently minded or have worked in the past or do work to reach out for those who don't, who are newly blind and have a lot of questions. Because what do we get to do? Well, rather than say that they're a guide dog user and I'm a cane user, or that they like to use Braille and I like to use large print, or vice versa, or let our preferences kind of set each other apart. No. We get to use our experience of being blind as a blessing, as a tool to help and pull somebody else along so that they too can experience the fullness of what life has to offer. So take, for example, I've done blind sports. Some of them have been better than others. I am a weightlifter. I run on the treadmill to kind of keep in shape. And so if I run into other blind people or people who are low vision and that need that extra boost to get into the gym or to find ways that they can have a more vigorous lifestyle, I'm more than happy to share with them what I've learned over the years and what I actually will learn, continue to learn as I see new apps and online or offline opportunities that will come my way. There's one thing about razzing each other to kind of be a little macho and that kind of thing, but we don't need to take that to extremes and put each other down or cancel each other out, as the word is. Rather, we in the blindness community have a great opportunity to advocate for one another by encouraging each other first. And so I hate to use the expression we're all in this together, but, well, we're all in this together who are blind and low vision. And for this matter, we hear enough perceptions that maybe we don't have the acumen to understand all the new technology in the workplace, or that we're the perception that, well, not all the new software on a company's internet is compatible with JAWS or another screen reader. That stuff is a lot of times fueled by misunderstanding until you show them the Freedom Scientific research that is done in developing our technology. Rather, we have the opportunity to work with companies to encourage people that we know who are sighted and in the workplace, that once they get to know us, maybe they'll be more motivated to get to know others who are blind as well, and to give them an opportunity, if applying for a job, to look into what are those accommodations. How does JAWS, rather than obstructing another computer system, how does it actually overlay the system so that even in some graphic operations and operations that don't require graphics, such as compliance or collection systems, how does JAWS actually enable somebody who is blind to work as efficiently as someone who is not? So we have these opportunities. We have these chances to also show that we aren't just sitting back waiting for the next gift to come along. You know, that's why blind sports is so important. That's why physical fitness is such an emphasis, even as young as in grade school and high school. And why we want to show people around us that, yes, we can compete if the sport is adapted, or if a physical activity like weightlifting is explained to us. We can do that. And one of the joys I have when going to the gym is to show, hey, I don't, once I know those increments between a weight and the next pounds up, I can do it without being watched or hovered over. At the place where I go run on the treadmill and do my mat work and my weightlifting, well, I see the desk workers when I come in, when I sometimes have a question, and usually when I leave. And they've gotten to know me. They all know me by name. And I've always said, hey, if this way you have another person that comes in that's blind or partially sighted, low vision, then they won't have to have as much reinventing the wheel when they teach them how to use the equipment. And so do I have to explain that, well, there's a blind way to be trained by the trainer on staff, or when I have questions about a certain way of doing weights? No, they've seen me do my weights. They've seen me bench press or run on the treadmill, do my push-ups and dips and that kind of thing. So they know what my capabilities are. And so as in everyday life, as self-advocates for the blindness community, we all can make our blindness a blessing to others. And not just because of blindness, but when they see our positive attitude and endurance, then people who may not have a noticeable physical disability might be able to see someone who is paraplegic, paralyzed in one way or another, waist down, hands, arms, so forth, and see them doing things, then the hero complex might be avoided. And that person can be seen as, well, just part of the mix, running along the same life as anybody else. And that's what we're all after anyway, is being on the same footing. And so being a blessing on blindness doesn't just help us individually. it helps the perception and the awareness of people around us. And the next area, along with that, think about the advocacy that goes on to help us find ways of living in an apartment. Well, a lot of times, if you are going into a new living situation, and let's say you have a guide dog, then most apartment complexes may have a weight limit for the dogs that are there, or some will say, well, no animals. Some will say only cats. Well, guide dog legislation, guide dog rules, state to state, and most states are like this, say that a service animal, guide dog, hearing aid dog, wheelchair, mobility dog, those four-legged friends are to be treated with the same dignity and respect as any other resident. So while they're animals, they have the same rights, and we have the same rights as any other resident that is in an apartment complex. So, when we advocate for housing accommodations, then we're able to, especially if we have a guide dog, we're able to explain to managers and to maintenance staff when we run into that our dogs, when out and about, are working. Then when people see that harness, when they see that sign on the dog's harness, then they know he's not just being puppy pet. He is being our eyes. And that's a big deal, because the same goes as if you are taking a guide dog into your local supermarket. If you're walking there on your own, or needing to follow someone around and your guide dog is how you get around instead of by cane, or preferring not to use sighted guide. Well, supermarkets are not exempt from those rules. Hospitals are not exempt from those rules. On the other hand, how can we who are blind be a blessing by showing such advocacy? Well, that may take a little bit of figuring out how to do it. But the basic rule of thumb is that we show our capabilities, raise awareness by taking care of our dog, making sure that, a guide dog isn't shedding or isn't sniffing away toward the salad bar or the fruit rows in a store, that we have the dog under control. And the same goes when we're looking at transportation. Technically, cab drivers, Uber drivers are under a contract. Nevertheless, even with Uber, the laws are on the books that they are not supposed to turn a ride down just because someone is blind and has a cane or has extra bags that take up room because of some health needs, or if someone has a guide dog. or any other service animal. The transportation options like Lyft or Uber, paratransit services are bound by contract to service anyone with or without a service animal. But how do we, rather than just act like bulls in China shop and demand our rights, which are already on the books, how might we be able to approach someone and give a positive awareness of what our capabilities are and the rules that are there? How can we help them have a better perception of what we can do and the control that we can have over what many people see as simply an animal, a helper with 4 legs? Well, our blindness is a blessing to other people by the fact that as we are in like the back seat of an Uber, when we have our dog between our legs or under our feet, you know, that we're still able to share our story with the driver, with that person that is taking us to the next place, so that, yeah, they may hear what we've overcome. They may hear that we've gone to school in a public school. Maybe we've been at a blind school. But word of mouth can be very powerful in this instance, and that we can share our life so that the next time that they may have a family member, a relative, or maybe even their kids run into somebody who's blind at school, then they can give that encouragement to receive them as just another person and respect who they are. And that's a challenge. It's a challenge and yet a motivator to rejoice in our blindness. It's so easy if we do get some form of mistreatment or oversight about what we need, or if there's a rude comment made. It's so easy for us to sit back, put our head in our hands, or frown. But is that going to help ongoing? It may make us get our feelings out, which could also be gotten out later on the gym treadmill, on the weights, or when we get home and we're needing to stew. But then, in the moment of interaction, the challenge is to allow our story to be positive, to influence someone's perception of us, so that, again, they run into the next blind person or the person with low vision and don't have to reinvent the wheel in their own head. I think that's really important because, another angle on how do we use our blindness as a blessing, or for blessing others, or showing our opportunities to others, is that we don't want to make a big stink about the whole oppression thing. Yes, I know that according to the Title X, disabilities are and people with disabilities are a protected class. That's been true for decades. And it's easy, especially if you are an advocate, as I am, to, go down the line and of, well, this is what we have been through. This is what that we have been overlooked. The current term today is marginalized or pushed aside. And in a greater scheme of things, maybe so. We've all studied the civil rights movement. We've seen the legitimate complaints that were handled in the race issues back in the 60s and 70s and before. And we who have disabilities have a lot of reasons to wonder about our place systemically when people have a lot of even learned perceptions of what we can and cannot do. Yet, individually, what do we gain by wanting people to treat us or pity us because of being oppressed? Rather, to be positive, to be forward thinking and take that extra step of boldness, we need to project that image of confidence, of caring about the fact that, yeah, when we go out to work, when we use our adapted paratransit systems, or even when we do take the bus somewhere, that we are making that image. We are that lasting picture of someone with a cane or using a guide dog or a wheelchair, that a bus driver, a passerby, that woman at the curb who's trying to calm her daughter down on the way to school is going to see, even if the nose of the car is stuck into the walkway. So when we are able to put, even if we don't feel like it, put that smile on our face or act relaxed and confident when we're going places, especially, or that we're able to speak well of one another. As a Christian, as a Lutheran Christian, I reflect a lot on the 8th commandment that says, do not bear false witness. And I go back to what I was taught. What does that mean? And, we do not lie or deceive or give a false testimony about somebody else, dragging them name through the mud just because we may disagree with how they handle blindness as opposed to us. No. Rather, when we are in public, I really believe it's time to put the in-house debates aside. And believe there are lots of in-house debates. We discuss whether, is it better to learn blindness skills with a sleep shade on or without one? Is it better to use a cane and follow somebody's voice, or is it better to use sighted guide? Is it better to use a guide dog or to have a cane? And these discussions go on all the time, online, offline, at conventions, and so forth. And it's so easy to cling to one another's friends in those same little niches that we put ourselves. And that's okay. There's a time for that. But when we are advocating for ourselves, we're also advocating, encouraging others to see us as capable, as productive, as dignified people who happen to be blind, navigating life's contours. So in all these ways, blindness can be a blessing. Blindness can touch other people. In fact, whether we like it or not, it will touch other people when they see us, when they meet us, when they walk past us on the sidewalk or drive across the intersection we're about ready to cross, or meet us at the gym. Yes, folks, let's face it. If we've got a dog, if we've got a cane, we aren't going to escape the fact that people will notice our blindness and that it is a part of our life. In fact, it's a fabric in who we are. And let's call that a good thing rather than bad. Let's not call it a problem or bemoan it, because there's nothing to bemoan. It's a contour. It's a characteristic. So let's knock down those barriers and take on life with all its contours, being boldly blind. Well, again, you can continue reading the blog, continue looking at what's going on in the blindness community and what's going on that we can be a blessing to other people, even as our disability has given us many, many opportunities to advocate, to enjoy life, to compete. And until next time, continue navigating life's contours, boldly blind.